All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Mike Dokter. I'm the coach of the girls' high school basketball team at the house out of Muskegon, Michigan, playing in the Michigan Basketball Academy circuit. And we are reading through Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Metcalf. We're going to read chapters 7 and 8 today. So thank you for joining. Maybe you've listened to this all at once, chapters 1 through now. Maybe you're listening to it in segments. For those of you who are new to the team, this is an opportunity again to get yourself up to speed on the stuff that the returning players studied last year. And if you're returning to the team, this is an opportunity to get yourself caught up for the lessons we're going to learn in Pound the Stone, which is the sequel to this book. That is going to be our book for next year. One thing that I didn't lead with when I first started making these videos is the fact that this book means a lot to me because I think that it talks about stuff that really matters. And one of the reasons I chose it is because I'm more concerned with who you all become as people as we're going through this process than actually winning basketball games. And sometimes that's hard to display. And the lessons that we learn in this book are actually going to help you with life. And I've failed a lot in life, and I've been very open and honest with all of you about that. Those of you who know me know that I'm open and honest about talking about that. I've also succeeded quite a bit. And in the midst of it, learning to fall in love with the process has been very personal and emotional to me. So, because of that, I am a bit of an emotional dude. And you may have seen it in the last video. I choked up a little bit with what I was reading. There is a good chance that I'm going to choke up and tear up while I'm reading you these words right now. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm going to be a little vulnerable with you. There's a good chance that you might see that. So I'm not ashamed of that. I'm proud of it because it means something to me. And I hope that at some point in your life, when you revisit this book, maybe not today, maybe not next year, maybe it's 10 years from now, you choose to read this book again. You choose to read it to your kids, whatever else it is. Maybe you get a little choked up too. And I want you to know that it's okay. So that was 2 minutes of intro to chapter 7 called Nothing is a Test from Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Metcalf. Nothing is a test. But try as he might, John kept unconsciously slipping back into his old habits. Growing up, he had always succeeded in sports and school by focusing on proving himself. Some of the coaches even told him they liked the way he played with a chip on his shoulder, and even in the peaceful environment of the samurai community, it was hard for him to shake those instincts of seeing life as one test after another to prove his worth. Without realizing it, he began to pride himself on completing each drill and archery movement the fastest, and even made sure that he chopped more wood and carried more water in less time than other apprentices. One day he was so focused on that he filled his buckets well above the normal level. Walking briskly toward the community house, his foot caught the lip of an old root buried in the ground, and the weight of the water in the bucket sent him toppling over. He slammed into the ground, soaked to the bone. But just as he opened his mouth to shout out in anger, he noticed Akira watching him. The old sensei had seen the whole thing, and as John picked himself up painfully off the ground, Akira pulled John up to his feet, picked up one of his buckets, and walked with him back to the well. "You were carrying quite a lot of water, weren't you?" he asked. John struggled, trying to play it off. "I guess I didn't think about it. I just tried to carry the most water I can." Akira saw through this, asking quietly, "The most you can, or just more than any of the others?" John reddened, and John reddened, caught as Akira went on. "John, you keep getting in the way of your own potential because you keep seeing everything as a test. The secret to understanding that nothing the secret is to understand that nothing is a test, but only an opportunity to learn and grow. Many people never fulfill their potential because they look at every situation in life as a test. If you look at something as a test, then you will focus only on passing the test instead of maximizing your growth through the experience. Over time, the person who is simply focused on maximizing what they can learn and how they can grow will become much greater than the person who sees life as one continual test to prove themselves." John nodded, struggling with that wisdom. "Don't fall for the trap, John. Even tests in school are not tests. Nothing is a test, it's only an illusion. Everything is an opportunity to learn and grow. Because remember, you are building your own house." All right, I made it through that one. So here's the deal. That is an extraordinarily important chapter, and I don't want you to think that tests aren't important. Don't go to your teacher or your parents and tell them, oh, coach said I don't have to take tests because they're not important. That's not at all what I said, for one. And that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that if you focus on a pass fail mentality, you're going to be focused on the wrong things instead of learning and focusing on the opportunity to learn and grow. I had another mentor who always told me failure is feedback. Failure is feedback. What that means is that it's okay to try something and screw up. If you take a test and you fail the test, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you're receiving feedback that you weren't prepared enough. When we go into battle on the basketball court, or when we go into battle in our personal lives, when we go to a mental battle or a spiritual battle, we're going to be tested over and over and over again. Not to see how strong you are, but to see how you've prepared yourself and what are the things you can improve upon. So as you continue to read through this book and think through the different things, realize when we're going through drills, when we're going through different plays, when we're setting up different strategies against teams we might play, it's not a test. It's not a test. It's just an opportunity to receive feedback. Not everybody sees things this way. Okay, so you're going to have coaches, you're going to have teachers, you're going to have mentors who fully believe in testing you. They fully believe in putting you through the ringer. They fully believe in exhausting you as much as they possibly can. I want you to understand that nothing is a test. It's not important. At the end of the day, it's just giving you feedback to be able to understand what you need to work harder on. Okay? All right, so this is the chapter that's possibly going to get me. Where do you find your identity? Chapter 8. As time passed, despite Akira's warnings, John grew more and more intently focused on his goal of becoming a samurai archer. He even began to sneak in extra time at the range. Every night at dusk, he would slip away from the dining hall and down to the range where he'd shoot until darkness fell. But over time, the extra practice began to wear on his body. Then, one afternoon on the range, he began to feel a burning tightness as he drew his bow, which became increasingly painful as he locked his shoulder into the firing position. He pushed through it, forcing his body to repeat the motion. But soon, the pain in his shoulder made firing his bow impossible. He cringed as, "What's wrong, John?" Akira walked toward him concerned. Clearly the old sensei had noticed the pain in John's eyes. John knew that there was no way to hide it. The next thing he knew, he was in the infirmary, getting his shoulder wrapped. Akira explained his injury, telling him practice is good, but too much practice is not. Your muscles have torn and they need time to rest and heal. How long? 6 to 8 weeks. John's face fell as he realized that because of this, he would fall further behind in his program. Seeing this, Akira asked John a question. John, who would you be if everything you do was taken away from you? What do you mean, Akira sensei? I mean that right now you are not an archer. You can't even shoot. So who are you? John thought for a minute, becoming frustrated as he realized he didn't have a good answer. Akira nodded, understanding. Do not worry. Even I fall for this trap, John. It's so easy for me to get caught up in the results I get from working with people to get lost in the work or in the response from my archers. I consistently have to remind myself that my value comes from who I am, not from what I do. I'm going to read that part again. I consistently have to remind myself that my value comes from who I am, not from what I do. It's easy to feel like your value is much greater when your teams win, when you make lots of money, when you experience great success in business. But it's just as easy to feel defeated and depressed when your teams aren't winning, when your business is failing, and when you feel like you're failing at everything. The truth is, your value is constant. It is priceless, and it never truly goes up or down based on the results of your performance. Your value comes from who you are, not from what you do. Every human being is infinitely priceless. You are more than an athlete. You are more than a parent. I told you. Excuse me. You are more than an athlete. You are more than a parent, a brother, a daughter. You are more than a coach. You are more than a CEO. You are more than a fast food worker. When your identity gets wrapped up in what you do, it clouds every decision you make. It is easy to see some of the reasons that a person would make very compromising decisions when their identity comes from what they do. You must fight that instinct. John nodded, realizing the truth in his sensei's words. Akira stood to go, leaving John with this. Here is my challenge for you during your time here, John. Find your identity in something that cannot simply be stripped away at it in any moment, but instead do the hard work of reminding yourself that your value comes from who you are. For me, it took me a long time to grasp this, but my identity comes from being a child of God and that He recklessly and unconditionally loves me. I believe He feels the same way about you and already unconditionally loves you. It has never been about your performance, and it never will be about your performance. You can't do anything to make Him love you anymore, and you can't do anything to make Him love you any less. Therefore, you are free to accept His love Him back, love yourself, and finally be freed to love others with no strings attached. I do not expect you to believe everything that I believe, John. You must come to your own conclusions. Whatever you do, though, please don't find your identity in something that can be gone in a moment's notice. All right, that was chapter 8. As promised, I've broken down. I promise you this is not an act for a video. That stuff is incredibly important to me. And like the author of this book and like the sensei character in this book, you do not have to believe what I believe. I will not ever force that upon you in any practice, in any situation, in any type of conversation that we have. But it is important to understand the wisdom in the statement that if you put your identity in something that can be taken away from you, the second that thing can be taken away from you, your identity is going to go with it. If your identity is in being the starting point guard and you get moved to the bench, what are you going to feel about yourself? If your identity is wrapped up in how many shots you make, what is going to happen when you miss a whole bunch of shots? If your identity is wrapped up in your family name, what's going to happen if that name goes to crap for some reason? We live in a world where attention is a pretty significant currency. And we like to wrap our identity up in how much attention we can get for doing cool things. High school is the absolute worst. It is the absolute worst thing in the world for this. Kids are cruel. They are. Adults aren't much better, but kids are super cruel. And until you get smashed in the face enough to understand that doesn't your identity isn't tied to what you produce. Your value isn't tied to what you produce. I'm going to say that again. Your identity shouldn't be tied to what you produce. Your value is not tied to what you produce. Your value goes deeper. You're more than a basketball player. You're more than a daughter. You're more than a girl on this team. You're more than a future significant other, future mom, maybe. You're more than what your grades say. You're more than what your coach says. You're more than what I say. You matter at a vastly deeper level than what you think you do. And it's important to understand that as a human being. And it's really hard to understand that, especially when you're going through different struggles. But it's so important to understand it when you do. And one of the things that I hope you got from that chapter and that you ultimately get from the book is that you are more than the things that are gauged against you in terms of productivity. You are more than those things. And I want you to understand and believe and have faith in that. And if you have any concern with that or any questions about that, or if I ever make you feel for whatever reason that you're tied to your results, please come and talk to me because that is not my intention. I love the lessons in this book. I'm excited to read them to you. I'm sorry for breaking down and being a little bit vulnerable. But there'll be other times. It's not over, I promise. The next book will be the same way. So those of you who have been on my team, you've already seen me do this. So this is not new news to you. Those of you who are new, who thought I was some big tough guy, joke's on you. But I'm excited again to continue to share with you. So thank you for listening. More to come. We'll see you next time. Bye now.